If you want to get somebody really confused and hypnotized, just bring up the term Social Security, because it's so confusing for everyone.
It is really hard to understand. So we are going to an expert. We have Patricia Taylor with us. She worked for the Social Security Administration for more than 30 years. You have seen laws change, benefits change, all kinds of stuff. So we're so glad for you to be with us today and hopefully
Thanks.
shed a little bit of light.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy to be here.
We know that this is such a huge topic that we could never cover all of it in the time that we have today. But as we're working with our aging parents, and maybe we're just becoming aware of their financial situation and not, understanding, well, why do you get this much for Social Security, or should you be getting this? What are the things that we need to be looking for?
First off, is whether there have been any life changes. That's critical.
Mhm.
Death, just any general life changes is what I would be looking for. And if you can't find those, then I'd be looking to see if they have a current benefit letter and what Medicare they're on.
Okay. So look for that benefit letter, which should spell out what they're getting and why they're getting it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think it's so important for the kids, for the adult children, to know, where do mom and dad get their money? Is it all from Social Security? Do you have a pension because you were a teacher or you work for the government or something like that? And you need to be open about it so that there's no confusion later on.
Yeah.
Right, because we want to be able to help them.
Yeah.
Yes. As far as the rest of other pensions are concerned, sometimes you might be able to find that information with their Social Security documents, but as a general rule, not. It'll only be their Social Security information.
Yeah. Okay. So if, and we know that if they did, if they were a federal worker or if they were as a teacher, a lot of times you're not paying into Social Security during that time. So you're not getting Social Security later, right?
Yes. And a lot of people don't understand that on their Medicare, you see Part A, which is hospitalization, Part B, which is your medical, doctors. Part A, if you have worked and paid in and are covered, is free because you pay for that in your taxes. Part B is the one that you pay a premium for. That's the one that you're looking for a new plan every year.
Okay.
So a lot of teachers, teachers who worked in non-covered, or government employees who were not covered, through marriage, they get their Medicare on their insured spouse. I know that sounds kind of complicated, but that's how they're getting it.
Yeah.
Okay. And maybe just to even clarify, because I know that there was some confusion on my part, that I didn't even realize that you were sort of paying your Medicare benefits out of your Social Security. So that is one thing just to be aware of, right? So like just recently, the rate, people got a raise of their Social Security, but also Medicare went up.
Yes. However, the brand new commissioner has gone to CMMS, which is the new name for Medicare, to reduce that. It's gone up to 170 this year. And he's gone to them and asked them to reduce that because new drugs have been covered this year. And I guess that's to offset. They're very expensive drugs. So he's gone back to them to ask them to reduce that premium.
And as you mentioned, talking about life changes, I know that when my mom's second husband passed away, she went to Social Security to see, what benefits she qualified for. And interestingly, which I had no idea, they pulled up his, but then they also pulled up my dad's Social Security because he had already passed away. And they gave her those, even though they were divorced, she still ended up getting benefits from my dad because it was higher. I mean, it's so confusing.
Yeah.
You get the higher benefit. I mean, and any Social Security rep will go in there and check to see which one's higher. And there you go.
The marriage has to last for a certain number of years, though, correct?
10 years.
Yeah.
10.
Okay. So
that's also another change. Back in the 80s, I believe it was, early 80s, they changed the requirement from a 20-year duration to 10. And you know what that's from? That's how socially things were going. People weren't married 20 years anymore.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So what do you see as the biggest mistakes and or questions that people have with Social Security? Not necessarily the elders, but the children who are trying to help their parents along.
Well, up here, I think one of the biggest questions I have is about teachers.
Mm-hmm.
In Texas, Austin Independent School District voted to stay into Social Security. The other school districts voted out. So teachers don't pay in. However, there is a caveat to that law that
Mhm.
says that if you have your last day of earnings in covered employment,
Mm-hmm.
then they consider you covered. So you can also work 5 out of the last years, 5 out the last 10 years of covered employment.
Mm-hmm.
They will cover you.
Yeah.
So there's the thing that kids don't understand, first off, that their parents not getting any benefits, or that they're having to pay their Medicare out of their um, teacher retirement,
Mm-hmm.
and have not dug into it deeply enough to see that mom could have been covered. See,
Mm-hmm.
even teachers who are not covered, they're not eligible for their spouse's benefit either.
Okay.
It's
So-
called a windfall elimination provision or government pension offset. So they
So-
don't get their own or their spouse.
Interesting. So where do you start to kind of figure all this out, to start kind of unraveling because each situation is unique and a little different, right? So where do you start?
If it were me, not even being a child, I would go to their earnings record first.
Okay.
I would go on to my account. It's essential these days for everyone to have a my account, a my Social Security account.
Okay.
You can order your earnings record so that you can make sure it's correct, or you can look at your mother's to see if where did she work? Is all of this correct?
Okay.
You can do all kinds of things in there.
Okay. So start there, because we were mentioning that. I realized that, I remember we used to get something in the mail all the time that had around my birthday that said, oh, hey, here's what you've paid in so far,
Right.
or what you might be eligible for when you're 65. And
Right.
You don't get it
and you
anymore.
don't get those anymore. So this is a way to be able to, so you can go back and check your earnings.
Right.
And so you just go to the Social Security Administration and website and create an account.
You go to ssa.gov, and
Mhm.
then it will give you three choices, and you click the my SSA account,
Mm-hmm.
and you go in there, and they give all kinds of, you can only imagine. It's a very secure site, so it's a bit of a
A
process.
bear to get into. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And even when you come back, like
Mhm.
if you come back 2 weeks later, you still have to go through another verification process.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
But
you definitely
better
don't,
safe than
yeah,
sorry.
you definitely don't want your
Yeah.
Social Security number being compromised.
That's right.
So what do you do if you find a mistake, or is there a statute of limitations for finding a mistake?
There is no statute of elimination there's no statute of limitations to keep you from correcting an error.
Okay.
However, it's really important to do it, because I've had people who come to file. I'll look at their record and I'll say, did you not work since 1970 through 1989? And they're floored.
Mm-hmm.
They worked for an individual. The individual took their taxes out, but did not pay them.
Oh.
How about that?
Wow.
Yeah. So it's good to check.
Yeah, and the longer it goes, probably the harder it is for you to be able to verify or still
Yeah.
have that documentation as well.
Oh, definitely
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's a bear. Yeah.
Mhm.
The other issue is, same scenario. I look at it and I'll say, did you make maximum earnings? There's a maximum amount of money that Social Security receives taxes from.
Right.
Mhm.
So if you make $500,000 and Mr. X makes 2,
Mhm.
we're taking the same amount of taxes.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Okay, the benefits are relatively the same.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So the scenario I'm giving you is someone who comes in and looks at him and says, I did not make that money. I didn't. No, I may have made 50,000, not 179.
Mhm.
So what Social Security calls those are scrambled earnings. Someone used their Social Security card
Hmm.
to work.
Huh.
And here are the earnings right on top of each other. So you have to take them apart to
Gosh,
get a correction. Yeah, it's a mess, but
It's
if
a
you,
lot.
It is.
yeah, if you
Yeah.
don't keep track of it, can be a mess.
It can. We've gotten a lot of questions from our group on Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
and I think we've got some to ask.
A couple of them were, one of them was just her mom just was getting benefits from her late husband, and all of a sudden they just stopped. So what do you do?
So here's a question for you. When you receive benefits from a late spouse, if you are eligible on your own Social Security record, let's see, he's living, she's getting hers, he's getting his. Hers are so high she can't get a spouse. They're both getting them. Then he passes away. I'm assuming the scenario is that she filed as a widow. I mean, is that what's going on here?
Well, and I know every situation is so different. So just, probably just in generalities. I don't know all the details, but just, if for some reason you just like something just seems amiss, or I was getting money and I wasn't, do I just call the Social Security and try to find out?
I would call the 1-800 number, 1-800-1213. Thought I wrote that down. But anyway, it's a 1-800 number.
Yeah. I'm sure it's easy to Google.
Yeah,
you may have to, yes, it is at Google, or it's at the SSA site. And just give them the scenario, because that doesn't sound too good. It sounds like maybe his death was not reported timely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because his check would definitely stop.
Yeah.
Okay.
No one tells these women to come in and file. That's the problem.
Right. Yeah. So if one of our parents passes away, we need to make sure, and the other one survives, we need to make sure that we go with that surviving parent to figure out what should be the new or revised norm.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Good to know.
And does it matter where you live? Because our group is all over the country. Does it matter where you live? Because we had one person who was in Minnesota, had a heck of a time figuring things out, came to Texas, and everyone's so nice in Texas that it was a little bit easier. So does it really matter where you are as far as when you have these Social Security questions?
It should not, because regardless of where you live, the Social Security law is the same.
Right.
The only time that we really pay attention to a certain state's law is when we're talking about legal separations and divorce decrees.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
well, and then, I was going to go ahead.
Even divorce decrees. This is a federal law. Some decrees say she's not going to get my Social Security. She is. That's how it is.
That's so interesting. Now, how do you know, and I know this is a little bit of a loaded question, but how do you know when it's still time to push and keep asking, trying to go up the ladder, if you will, when you're not getting the answer that makes sense to you? And when do you know, okay, we've exhausted all of our options and this is what it is? Does that make sense? That I feel like sometimes, you think, well, I don't know that I don't know that this person sounded like they're really looking into it or whatever, but how do you know when to keep pushing?
When to keep pushing is when you hear 3 or 4 different answers from someone who supposedly knows what they're talking about.
Okay.
Because that tells you right there, there's not a full understanding of the question or of the answer. And I'll be the first to admit that the answers to some questions are difficult. Social Security has this thing called to and through and an or. So if you're looking at a requirement in the policy that says through the date of entitlement, that's through the whole month. So if you're looking at what does this require, and it gives you several options. If it says or, then you only need one. But if it says and, you need the whole list. So if you're talking to someone who doesn't really understand stuff like that, you may be getting different answers. So you might want to keep moving.
So ask for a supervisor, perhaps, or get an expert, or get an expert like you who can help walk through the process.
I would.
If mom or dad, whoever the bigger breadwinner was, but if mom or dad retired at 62 or 65 or 67, something when they're still healthy and we're not really worried about them, and now they're 80 or 85, is there going to be something where we look back and go, ooh, things have changed a little bit because you retired at 62 as opposed to waiting till 65 or waiting till 67 or 70? Does that affect things other than the dollar amount every month? Does it affect anything else that we need to be worried about or be watching for?
Are you almost saying like advising them when they're deciding when to retire?
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything we should worry about in that respect?
I'll give you the rule of thumb that every claims representative uses.
Okay.
Mhm.
It's called, if it takes you less than 8 years to recoup the amount of the benefit loss by going early, there's a difference between the
Yeah.
low benefit and the high benefit.
Mhm.
Right.
If it takes you less than 8 to recoup, then you need to wait. It's
Mhm.
not financially advisable.
Okay.
If it's going to take you more than 8 years
Mhm.
to play out the advantage of taking that money early, in some cases as long as 7 years,
Mhm.
if it's going to take you more than 8 years to recognize that,
Mhm.
then take it and run.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
There are
Interesting.
a lot of people who use familial longevity.
Mhm.
Oh, my family is 100. I'm not going to take that benefit. I'm going to wait till I'm 70. Okay, so we go through the rule of 8. And my usual response is, if you walk out that door and you're hit by a bus, you get nothing.
Mhm.
So consider that. It's not longevity. You could die tomorrow.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
don't need the benefit, put it under your bed or in an account. Don't use it. Let it grow.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So that's the
Okay.
one rule you do use.
Okay.
But
But
as far as widow benefits, death benefits, anything like that, other than the dollar amount, it doesn't affect anything.
as you get older.
No.
Okay.
Now,
And I love that. I know there's
And,
always a
however,
caveat, right?
there's a however.
that's right. Yeah. Well, when you're talking about being 80 and 90, yeah, very few things affect that.
Okay.
Unless you're someone who's married at 80 or
Yeah.
divorces at 80.
Mhm.
But for someone who retires early,
Mhm.
Mhm.
between that date of retirement and the date of attainment of full retirement age, now it's close to 7-8 years,
Mhm.
things can change.
Mhm.
Work, death, remarriage,
Mhm.
cutting back on work, going to work, making too much. The thing about it is, you retire at 62, you decide at 64 to go back to work.
Mhm.
We're going to give you any benefit month that you never got paid. They give those back to you. They credit that back to you. So if you're talking about changes,
Mhm.
most of them are going to occur between the time of retirement age and full retirement age.
Okay.
Those
Okay.
other ones are
Makes
skimpy.
sense.
Phew. Okay. This
It's a
is
lot.
yeah, it is a lot. And I
Yeah.
know that we've just kind of scratched the surface,
Yeah.
right? So
It's been an extra long interview, and we
Yeah.
still barely scratched it.
no, I know
Yeah.
there's a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah. Thank you so much for all of the answers, and I'm sure there will be many more questions though along the way.
Did we look at? There's one other thing I wanted to ask you about.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, we have the Social Security account, working while entitled, Medicare, and survivors. We hit them all.
Okay. It's a lot.
Good.
I know. And it's still, I know, just the beginning. And so I think this is, we just so appreciate your time because I think it just helps people just get a sense of what are the things that we need to be listening for, questions to ask, and things like that. So
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. Anytime.
Thank you.
Wow.
You
I know
feel-
my
you
head's
feel
spinning
kinda
just a little
overwhelmed?
bit. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think the real benefit of this is just if you hear something that you think, ooh, wow, that I've heard mom say that or dad say
Mhm.
that, and maybe I need to look into that a little bit
Yeah.
more. At least gives you the confidence to know that yes, this is something to look into, and whether it's calling Social Security and hoping that you're not on hold too long, or getting an expert to help you who can really help you navigate the system. There are ways to be able to try to hopefully get those answers.
Yeah, look into things. That's the biggest thing. And if you have any other topics you'd like us to dive into, let us know. Parenting aging parents.